주로 스카파로티 장군님의 말씀을 듣는 시간이기 때문에 제가 먼저 스카파로티 장군님을 간략하게 소개를 해드리고 그 다음에 스카파로티 장군님의 말씀을 좀 듣고 또 질의응답을 하는 그러한 순서로 진행을 하겠습니다. 스카파로티 장군께서 여기서 사령관을 하셨기 때문에 여기 계시는 대부분의 귀빈 여러분들이 스카파로티 장군님을 잘 아실 거라고 생각을 합니다만은 존경하는 뜻에서 제가 간략하게 소개를 드리겠습니다. 사령관님은 1978년도에 미국의 웨스트포인트를 졸업하고 소위로 임관을 했습니다. 그래서 첫 보직이 82 공정사단에서 이제 소대장을 하셨는데 나중에 이분이 거기서 사단장도 하십니다. 그리고 그 82 사단장 이외에도 미 육군의 제1여단장, 제1기갑사단의 부사단장, 또 아프가니스탄에서 국제안보지원군 사령관, 또 아프가니스탄 주둔 미군 부사령관 등을 역임을 하셨고 2003년도에는 또 이라크 전쟁에도 참전을 하신 바 있습니다. 스카파로티 장군이 여기서 연합사령관을 하신 게 2013년 10월부터 2016년 4월까지 사령관을 하셨는데 그 뒤에는 다시 또 유럽으로 건너가셔서 미군 그 유럽 사령부의 사령관 임무를 수행을 하셨습니다. 그래가지고 전역을 하신 것은 재작년 2019년 5월에 41년간의 군 생활을 하시고 그런 다음에 전역을 하셨고 전역 이후에도 사령관님은 지금 그 코엔 그룹의 선임 고문, 또 어틀랜틱 카운슬의 이사, 또 애국재단의 자문위원, 미 국방대학의 선임연구원, 또 저희와 긴밀하게 같이 그 파트너로서 그 활동을 하고 있는 주한미군 전후의 KDBA의 그 이사로서 여러 가지 그 다양한 활동 그리고 또 한미 동맹을 위한 그 기여하는 그러한 활동을 하고 계십니다. 그러면 지금부터 큰 박수로 스카파로티 장군님의 말씀을 청해 듣겠습니다.
Well, General Jung, my friend, thank you so much for this that kind introduction, and it's so good to see you. I appreciate the fact that you brought this together and gave me an opportunity to see so many friends here this morning. Thank you. I also want to thank each of you for taking the time in an early in your day to come here and share this with us and give me an opportunity to speak and a short question and answer. It is great to be back in Seoul. It's been 2 years, and it seems like it's been far too long. And of course, we've all gone through quite a bit in the last 2 years internationally. But it's great to see you. I would tell you that I think we're stronger because of what we've been through, without a doubt. And our alliance is stronger that we've learned. So, first of all, I just want to thank CUSAF and all the work that you do here in support of the Alliance. It's quite amazing. It's very important. I can tell you personally from taking part in the webinars and the activities from the states, the support for KDVA and others, it's very important. You can see the impact in terms of education, support for our veterans, information about the Alliance, discussions about the important issues. All those things are supported by CUSAF, and they've had a huge impact. And then finally, personally, the ability to stay connected with you and others through the webinars that we've done and the meetings that we have has been tremendous, because we've been able to maintain a close personal relationship despite the distance and despite the pandemic as a result of the work that you do. So again, thank you. This morning, I'll cover 3 topics briefly. One, the strength of the Alliance and the importance of the Alliance. Two, the imperative to build an alliance relevant to the present and future security environment. And three, I'll close, given time, with a few lessons or things that I believe I learned are important from having the privilege of leading two of the most historic alliances in history. And I'll keep this short in light of the fact that those of us who are going to the opening ceremony at 8X will have to leave here by 8. So first of all, the alliance. My message to you is the alliance is strong. The message I bring back from the United States is that it's stronger and getting stronger. I visited with the Defense Department, members of the NSC before I came, and it's all very positive. In fact, one of the leaders said it's the strongest that he's seen, certainly since 2009, and this is an individual that's worked with the alliance and on affairs here in Korea for most of his career. So that's all important. You certainly can look at the success of the summit in May. That underscores the strength of this alliance and the agreements that we made that are actually between our countries that are broader than just the defense domain. And I think that's very important. We've made progress in our objectives within the alliance, particularly in the military readiness and modernization, and that continues in the right direction. That's very obvious to me as I go to 8X and I see Korean defense capabilities, and as you go to each one of the chalets that show the Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marines, it's remarkable. And you can see the modernization that's taking place there as well. So, again, the message is I think the alliance is strong, and that's very important. Now, that's also important because we live in a really difficult time. It's a very challenging time. In my view, this is the most challenging security environment that we've seen in the course of my career over 41 years. Great power competition has returned. China and Russia being much more aggressive. International terrorism has not slowed down. All of these putting pressure and actually trying to disrupt the rules-based order, the democratic rules-based order that our nations hold so dear and we both believe are fundamental values now and in the future. So the alliance here is important for all those reasons. Technology, disruptive technology, putting pressure on our societies. I happen to believe strongly that the best response to all of these challenges is a strong alliance. That neither one of our countries can face these problems successfully alone. That we're better doing it together, and that we're much better doing it together and with our partners. Now, these challenges underscore our need as an alliance to focus, I think, with urgency on readiness and modernization, solid training. As you know, as the commander, I emphasize those same things, but that's not changed. As soldiers, we know throughout history, we've rarely known the time or day that we'll find ourselves in conflict. I think our batting record has been 100% wrong over history. It comes when it's least expected. And as you all know here, it can come quickly. You live here, we as an alliance work here with really the most heavily armed demilitarized zone facing us only 35 miles away. It's a very dangerous part of the world in that respect. And so again, the urgency for training, for readiness, for modernization is very important. We have to keep our focus on providing an alliance with force capabilities that are relevant to the security environment we're in today and relevant to that which we'll see in the future. And that security environment is changing rapidly, particularly if you look at technology and its impact. So we have no time to rest, and we must focus. The last point here is we've also got to focus on our threat in North Korea. Sometimes, I think, not here, but just generally, as I've served in Europe and here, we're focused on the issues of the day, and we often refer to that, but we forget the threat. And as soldiers, as an alliance that's responsible for the defense of the Republic of Korea, we have to keep that threat in mind. A threat that I think we would all admit has only increased in recent years. North Korea continues to produce more precise missiles. They demonstrated their intent again yesterday, very physically, with a couple of shots, and they continue to increase their nuclear capability. So we can't rest at all. Now, I would close that part by saying that it's my belief that OPCON transition and the conditions that were agreed upon within the alliance by both sides are a good starting place, because there the military professionals and defense professionals come together mutually and establish those conditions for a proper transfer, and those conditions also reflect what we must do to confront the security environment, and they're that important, and of course we review those regularly, and I think that's key. So finally, I'll close here with a few thoughts on having served, having had the privilege to serve both as the commander here of Combined Forces Command and NATO in Europe. Two historic alliances. There's never in history been alliances as successful as this. This one here, born in blood, strong ever since, and it has kept the peace here and stability and allowed the just phenomenal growth of the Republic of Korea, now the 10th most powerful economy in the world, a country that's come that far. That is in a large way because of, first, the Korean people's capabilities and just sheer perseverance, the qualities that you have so well, but also because we've had an alliance that allowed us to do this. So the first principle that I learned is this, and that is the first principle is unity in an alliance. As a commander, we often looked at all the capabilities militarily, but the thing I focused on in both of them is unity, because trust that's the coin of the realm, and we can never take it for granted. There will always be some turbulence politically, etc. It's the world we live in. But we have to focus on maintaining that unity. Secondly, that North Korea works every day to split our nations. That's one of their primary objectives, and we should never allow that to happen. We should keep that in mind so that we stay strong. The final part of this premise is that, the mill-to-mill relations represented right here between us and our friendship. It started long before I came to Korea, in fact, as General Jung visited me as First Corps Commander. Those mill-to-mill relationships, past and present, are so important, because what I found in both of these alliances is you may have policy turbulence at the highest level, but the mill-to-mill relationship is that stable platform, candid discussions, close relationships that keeps these alliances on a smooth path, despite whatever turbulence there is in the world around us. So I would say to you the mill-to-mill relationships are very important. Second thing I would point out is that the combined processes in the integrated headquarters mature an alliance, and they accelerate things like decision-making, innovation, and readiness. We shouldn't lose sight of the fact that combined headquarters, CFC, our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines sitting side by side, desk by desk, with a common purpose, is a real strength of this alliance. And I mention that because we've gone through a change of establishing new headquarters, of the U.S. moving to Camp Humphrey, that we can't lose sight of the importance of that integration, of our personnel in the military working closely together. The third point as a commander in these two organizations that I learned, and I'll just put it this way, is don't sweat the small stuff. In today's media-rich world that focuses us on the issues of the day, in an alliance, don't sweat the small stuff. Keep your eye on the strategic objective the alliance was formed for. Don't let those issues drag you into a very short-sighted decision process. Think strategically. So again, don't sweat the small stuff. Each nation in this alliance needs to have some humility. It needs to listen closely to each other and act in a mutual basis. And I found in both of these organizations that if we can do that, we will get the right answer and we'll get a better answer. So with that, I'd just like to close by saying thank you all again for coming. It's great to see you all. I really treasure this memory in my life and the friendship that I made here now. One of my greatest privileges was to command here in CFC, and it's a part of my life that I and Cindy treasure. And you can see that now as we try to return as often as we can and we stay in touch with our friends here. So thank you.
예, 스카파로티 장군님 감사합니다. 지금부터는 이제 질의응답 시간을 갖도록 하겠습니다. 지금 스카파로티 장군님이 사실 여기서 지금 08시에는 떠나셔야 되기 때문에 시간이 다소 제한이 됩니다만은 가용한 시간 범위 내에서 Q&A를 진행하도록 하겠습니다. 가급적 짧게 질의하시고 또 스카파로티 장군님이 답변하시고 하는 그런 형태로 진행을 하겠습니다. 먼저 토의를 시작하는 그런 의미에서 제가 먼저 하나 간략하게 질문을 드리겠습니다. 최근에 이제 그 종전선언에 대한 얘기들을 많이 하고 있습니다. 대통령께서 이제 유엔에서 연설을 하시고 이렇게 하면서 이 종전선언에 대한 얘기를 이제 뭐 많은 국민들이 이렇게 하고 합니다. 근데 여기에 이 생각들이 좀 많이 다른 것 같습니다. 어떤 분들은 이게 지금 정전 체제를 깨뜨리는 것이고 아마도 그 결과로 유엔사의 해체 요구라든가 주한미군의 철수라든가 또 한미 동맹의 해체라든가 이런 결과가 될 것이다라고 생각하는 분들도 있고 또 어떤 분들은 이게 그 평화로 가는 어떤 그 입문이 될 수 있다. 사실 이 종전선언이라는 것이 정치적인 선언이고 그것이 이제 진정한 평화의 길로 갈 수 있는 길이 될 것이다. 그렇게 생각하는 분도 있는 것 같습니다. 그러니까 많은 희망도 있고 우려도 있는 것이죠. 그래서 이게 지금 종전선언에 대해서 우리 스카파로티 장군님은 어떤 인식을 가지고 계시고 우리는 과연 그걸 어떻게 생각해야 될 것인지 그 생각을 좀 공유해 주시기 바랍니다.
So thank you, General Jung. A very important question, one I'm glad I was asked. My thoughts on the end of war declaration are as follows. I think, first of all, you pointed out a fact, and that is this is a complex issue. Presently, it means something different to any number of people that you talk to. And this discussion needs to be had in a very deliberate way and a careful way so that there's full understanding of what we mean by this, and if we were to take action, what that action would be and what the result would be. Mm-hmm. It's very important. The second is that I think it's an important discussion to have between our countries, and it's best done diplomatically between our countries. That it's that important. Done quietly, done in a very structured way. Often when these things are done publicly, you get a lot of confusion. You don't necessarily get the best outcome. So that's why I would say a good diplomatic process internal to our countries is important. And the third thing is I think we have to, as I mentioned in my points, we sometimes forget to go back and think about the threat that this alliance was formed to counter. That won't change the day after a declaration of the end of war. It will still be present in the same way, in the same place, most likely. And our responsibility as an alliance is to defend the Republic of Korea and the people here. So I would keep those in mind as we think about an end to war declaration.
네, 감사합니다. 그러면 이제 질의응답 시간을 갖겠습니다. 제가 눈이 좀 저기 안호영 대사님이시군요. 아이고, 예, 질문해 주십시오.
General Scaparotti, let me begin by welcoming you very warmly to Korea, and I hope that Cindy could have come with you. Did she?
She did not, Ambassador, but
Oh,
she
that's
is
bad.
she is regretting that as she looks at the pictures I sent her of our friend.
right.
Good to see you.
So next time, I hope you could come with Cindy, and then maybe we could get together over lunch or dinner or something.
You have a deal.
Thank you. And then having said that, I have 2 points. My first point is common, second point is a question. The common is, of course, I agree with everything that you have said, without any exception. Particularly what you said, that we are living through a very difficult time, including the technology, development of the technology, and then at the same time the fact that North Korea somehow, it in fact is having a very difficult economy, but at the same time when it comes to technology, somehow it is taking advantage of fully advanced technology in developing its weapon system. And I totally agree with your recommendation that maybe the best way we could deal with this difficult situation would be through the alliance. I totally agree with you. So that's my comment, and my question would be this, which is, well, several months ago, you in fact were a member of a very important group organized by Chicago Council on Global Affairs, and then it came out with a report, and then that report there was a recommendation about recommending something like NATO-style nuclear planning group, so that as an additional means through which we could be dealing with North Korean nuclear threat. And then with respect to NATO-style nuclear planning group, not too many people understand how it works, how it functions. Particularly, I heard some politicians say at the end of the day, well, the nuclear button, it will be held by the American president. So what good does it do? Even if we have nuclear planning group, what good does it do? I in fact heard many politicians saying that actually. So, so far as the time permits, I would very much appreciate what you, by the way, talking about you having been the commander of CFC here in Korea as well as in NATO, I think in the history of the United States, you were the only one who performed both duties. So I have to remind myself I'm in the presence of a historical figure. And so my question would be that, I mean, drawing upon your experiences as a commander of CFC here in Korea, as well as commander of NATO, I think it would be extremely helpful for us if you could share with us what you thought were the advantage of NATO nuclear planning group. Thank you, and then once again, welcome to Korea.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you for your comments. I'm humbled by the fact that I had the privilege to serve in both those positions, and I never forget that. The nuclear planning group, I think, is something that was very valuable in NATO because it brought the nations together to discuss this critical capability within the alliance. And while, as you mentioned, some might say, well, ultimately it's up to the American president because it's an American capability. But by bringing it into that planning group, America, the United States, sat among the other nations and discussed the capabilities, discussed the scenarios that might come about, was familiar with the stationing, the planning, the locations, etc., all those things. And so, again, it's about trust, right? It's about, within the alliance, having a conversation about one of the most sensitive capabilities that we have and could potentially be employed in support of this alliance or the alliance in NATO. So what it did is it assured the other nations both of the capability and the will of the United States. And I just believe that anytime that you have greater communication among the nations, that you share that information openly, that we have those conversations, you build that trust and you build the understanding of what that capability can and cannot do. You come to an agreement on how it might be used. And with a nuclear capability, an understanding of its purpose is the first fundamental principle. And so what the Nuclear Planning Group did is it drove those conversations and it informed those conversations. And I thought it was significant, it was important. And within NATO, we held that council every time the ministers of defense came together, and often with another set of persons, below that level more frequently. So I hope that's helpful.
네, 감사합니다. 예, 저 뒤에 홍기덕 교수님이신가요? 네.
네, thank you very much for sharing your busy schedule with us this morning. My name is Gyuda Kong. I have one quick question. We are beginning to hear about, the Secretary Austin mentioning about some integrate deterrence. So how do you define, the meaning of integrate deterrence? And then in that, catch-all, how do you think, the Korea should play the role?
Well, I can't comment on Secretary Austin's definition of that because I'm just not aware of it. I've seen his statement in that regard, but I've not heard him describe it in detail. So I'm sorry. I can give you my thoughts though on deterrence. Your question goes to the heart of the reason I believe that we're all better off as an alliance, because that deterrent is a deterrent formed by the mutual capabilities, in this case, of the Republic of Korea and the United States together. And any way you look at it, if you look at North Korea and the size of their military, for instance, or their factual capabilities, when you then refer to the strength of the alliance, the U.S.-ROC alliance, and all that it brings to bear, not just militarily, economically, diplomatically, in the information realm, with our industry, it's a clear deterrent. North Korea can't even match that. It can't even come close to that. To me, that's a powerful deterrent in and of itself. And in today's world, all of those things make deterrence one important, but probably more difficult than they were, say, in the Cold War. I think deterrence today is different, and perhaps that's one of the points that Secretary Austin was trying to make. The deterrence today is different. Just the speed of information and the speed of influence on humans in that regard alone makes deterrence different today.
네. 또 다른 질문 있으십니까? 예, 권장군님.
예, 안녕하십니까. 한국국방외교협회 권태훈입니다. 오늘 감사를 드립니다. 최근 북한의 위협과 함께 중국과 대만의 군사적 긴장이 굉장히 고조가 되고 있습니다. 중국과 대만의 군사적 긴장으로 인한 영내 불안정이 한반도 안보에 미치는 영향이 무엇인지, 그리고 한미가 함께 할 수 있는 어떤 과제가 있다면 어떤 문제를 함께 할 수 있는지 답변해 주시면 감사하겠습니다.
Well, again, I go back to the importance of our alliance. As you know, we have discussed, and I've seen that our nations have discussed what we call a global alliance, a more global alliance. I happen to believe that's the case, and it's because, Professor, of the shifting global power, the center of gravity of global power is shifted to the Pacific. It is more uncertain, as you said. And the importance there is that we use this alliance to ensure stability. We often say the alliance is a linchpin of stability here in the peninsula. I actually think it's also very important in stability in the region. The Republic of Korea has the capability and uses that capability, not only militarily, but in your other elements of power, to be a stabilizing country in this region. And working together, there's a lot of influence that we can have in order to ensure that stability, to ensure that we support the democratic rules of order internationally that have supported a fair economy, freedom of people, appropriate human rights, etc. All of those values that our nations together believe in. So I think that's the value of the alliance, and I think that's the first way that we respond to this uncertainty, with a clear message that we are aligned in our values and that we're together in the actions that we're taking. And as two countries that are strong, we also have plenty of partners that stand beside us.
네, 감사합니다. 장군님의 출발 시간을 고려해서 앞으로 두 분의 질문을 더 받도록 하겠습니다. 그쪽에 마이크가 있죠? 네.
My name is Song Sang-ho from Yonhap News Agency, and thank you very much for your presentation. My question is, you know that you are aware of the SLBM test on Tuesday by North Korea. So what do you think about the intention behind the SLBM capability that North Korea has been pursuing? Do you think that this is related to the second strike capability, which is quite threatening? So can you sort of elaborate on their sort of pursuit of the SLBM in what context, you know, in broader nuclear strategic context, please?
Well, I think it's natural, and it's one of the dangers of a nation that develops, particularly a rogue nation like North Korea, that develops a nuclear capability. Because as you develop that capability and the missile capability, you naturally want to say, well, what more can I do with this, right? You know, how many different ways can I use it? And that is a problem with a country that's irresponsible with these missiles and the nuclear capability that it's developed. And certainly it poses another problem to the alliance, because a submarine capable, you know, with a submarine launched capability, missile capability, is another threat to the alliance, and one that we have to make adjustments, that we have to now consider in terms of the defense of, you know, the Republic.
예, 이제 마지막 질문을 받겠습니다. 예, 김기련 의원님.
네, 스카파로티 사령관님, 다시 뵙게 돼서 반갑습니다. 저는 미국과 한국의 동맹에 있어서 한국 정치의 미국의 역할이랄까 이런 걸 좀 질문을 하고 싶습니다. 지난 트럼프 정부에서 우리나라에 선거가 있을 때 트럼프 대통령께서 며칠 전에 우리나라 대통령과 만나니까 사실은 현 정부의 국회의원 선거가 완전히 기울어지게 되었었습니다. 공교롭게도 내년에 또 대통령 선거가 있습니다. 이 부분에 있어서 미국의 역할이 굉장히 미국은 역할을 하지 않는다 하더라도 우리 한국 정부는 영향을 받게 되어 있습니다. 그 상황에서 지금 종전선언에 대해서 미국 정부와 한국 정부가 긴밀히 움직이고 있는 것을 저희들이 알고 있는데요. 이 종전선언이든 아니면 북한과의 화상회의든 이런 부분에 있어서 또 한국 선거에 영향이 미쳐질 거라고 생각합니다. 그래서 되도록이면 미국 정부도 우리 진보와 우파의 균형을 좀 이룰 수 있는 이런, 그리고 한미 동맹이 또 굳건히 갈 수 있는 방향, 그것을 잘 좀 알고 그러니까 역할을 해주시기를 부탁을 드리고 어떻게 보시는지 질문을 드리고 싶습니다.
Yeah, thank you. A policy question for a general, and I've got to tread carefully. Well, first I would just say, I'm not a member of our government. I'm a retired general officer. So that's the first point. So what I'm about to say is personal. It's Scaparotti's opinion. But first and foremost, I think that our nation generally has been very careful and has maintained a policy of not, being involved in a nation's election process. That's a sovereign country's process. And I think they will be careful in that regard, and I think they should be careful in that regard. So that's my personal opinion on this. I would only say too that you note that I earlier said that, you know, the end of war declaration is complex. It should be done in a deliberate way and quietly being in a diplomatic fashion, not publicly. And, you know, your specific point is why I brought that out, because I think it's better for us all if it's done in a proper way and quietly as opposed to publicly, and certainly as a part of, say, the election. The politicians will have their choice as to how they approach that topic, right? But beyond that, I think it should be done officially in a quiet way.